Hey everyone! Once again, thank you so much for all of your support, all the likes and the comments and the subscriptions. I really appreciate it. Also, do not forget the original authors' links will all be in the description down below, so please go and check them out and let her know that you are really enjoying the story because she has put in so much work on this story. I'm just reading it out loud. I also wanted to preface this video saying that there was an attempt at a Japanese accent, so like a Japanese speaker speaking in English with an accent. And I just want to say that it's not from a place of malice. I do not mean any offense. It's just an attempt at an accent, and I apologize if it is offensive. I guess if enough people probably say so that it is offensive, then I'll go back and I'll rework that part and re-upload the video. But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that I do not mean it in any kind of harmful way. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoy this chapter. Also, remember that I do have a Twitter. I keep you guys updated on the progress of these videos. So if you ever want to find out how I'm doing with the video progress, then you guys can follow me there. And that's about it. So enjoy, guys. Thank you once again so much for your support. Enjoy the next chapter. Cool air blew through the vents near the ceiling, wafting down onto the gentle rise and fall of a warm blanket draped over a lumpy silhouette that stretched from one arm of the couch to the other. The sound of the ice maker in the freezer rattled as new frozen cubes toppled down into the tray, echoing through the otherwise quiet apartment. A bird outside mistook one of the windows as a mirror and smacked into it hard enough to jolt Bakugou awake, hands at the ready with sparking palms as the blanket slid to the floor. He looked around for a moment before realizing where he was, and where he wasn't, before falling limply back onto the couch with a groan. Day 4. Everything sucks, he cursed with a snarl. Wait, Saturday. What time is it? Bakugou rubbed the sleep from his eyes and stumbled off the couch to look at the time displayed on the microwave. Almost 8 o'clock. For once, he missed having a phone, if only to keep track of time wherever he went. Normally, his notifications buzzed with annoying text or missed calls from agencies wanting a merchandise deal, or to use him in an ad, so keeping it on silent was preferred. He turned around and stared at your closed bedroom door, concluding that you must still be asleep. Shit, the park. Big social crowds. Better than sitting around doing nothing, I guess, he mumbled, while remembering the plan for today. As frustrated as he was about still being here, he knew getting angry and blowing shit up wouldn't solve his very unique problem. The villain probably counted on him losing his cool and being miserable, so just out of spite, he'd keep his shit together while trying to possibly, maybe, have a halfway decent time today. Bakugou grabbed a set of clean new clothes from the closet along with his familiar jeans and worn hoodie for a full day outside. Being thankful for something as mundane as clean underwear struck him as bizarre when coming out alive during dangerous missions often overshadowed the ability to take a hot shower to wash off the blood and grime. Again, he considered what could have happened, where he could have possibly ended up, but scoffed and brushed the hypothetical scenarios aside before heading into the bathroom to shower. He always turned the water to the hottest setting, enjoying the nearly scalding sensation on his skin. Bakugou reached down to grab his soap, but grabbed yours by mistake until he wiped the water out of his eyes. It was right then, for the first time in over 3 days, that Bakugou realized he was roommates with a woman, and the possible implications that carried. He was using your shower, staying in your apartment, and sleeping on your couch. This wasn't a hotel. This was your home, and his temporary living space until he figured out how the hell to get back home. Fuck, he muttered, quickly grabbing his own soap and trying not to think too hard on it. Not like it mattered anyway. He wasn't about to parade in the nude or do something questionable to make you uncomfortable. Still, this roommate situation was a first, and he'd exercise appropriate mindfulness going forward. He and Kirishima agreed to rooming together after graduation. both sidekicks to pro heroes as they worked their way upwards and gained reputations until they felt stable enough to move out on their own. It worked out well enough since they'd known each other all through their time in UA, but this current scene extended beyond his expertise. You seemed more comfortable around him day by day, and managed to joke around about something as stupid as Pokemon, so Bakugou judged you didn't see him as much of a threat anymore. The thought unsettled him a bit, considering he still didn't know whether or not you had ulterior motives, but he felt increasingly sure that you couldn't do him much harm. He'd go out, ride some damn roller coasters, and observe you in a setting outside of this small apartment. No problem. The sound of your alarm sounded muffled through the warm covers pulled up over your head. It was Saturday, so why? Oh my god, it's Saturday, you exclaimed, while sitting up and reaching over to grab your phone and shut off the noise. You set an alarm to wake in time for the theme park to open. Bakugou, you muttered, before once again creeping out of the bed and peeking through your bedroom door. You gasped when you saw the couch was empty, a crumpled blanket left behind. He's gone. A surprising pang echoed in your chest, sad that an opportunity to really get to know Bakugou disappeared while you slept. Then you looked up and saw the closed bathroom door before hearing the sound of running water. He's still here! You covered your mouth in excitement, but couldn't hide your smile as you slid into the kitchen to pull some things out for breakfast. Park food was always overpriced, so eating well now might save you some cash later. You knew how selfish it was to feel pleased that Bakugou hadn't returned home yet. But you couldn't fix his problem. All you could do was try and make him comfortable, while fighting the urge to literally fangirl around a hot anime guy come to life. This was your temporary life, and you had no choice but to accept it. The bathroom door opened while you were halfway done with breakfast, but you couldn't look at the man walking behind you for fear of burning the food. Bakugou was absolutely the type to mock you for screwing up a meal, but you refused to give him the satisfaction. Ohayo, you heard from behind you. The phone app wasn't open, but you knew what it meant from watching enough subbed anime. Bakugou leaned up against the wall and watched you cook, scrutinizing your hands moving over the hot stove. It seemed like he was ready to go, and you hadn't even showered yet. Or maybe he projected being reserved rather than openly eager to ride some coasters. Ohayo, you mirrored, which he quirked a brow up at before silently snickering. What? You asked, but of course any Japanese reply would fly right over your head. You set down a spatula and opened up your phone with a questioning look. What's that look for? You asked again. Your accent mixed with Japanese is... He paused before finishing his statement. But you weren't sure why, since Bakugou always seemed to know what to say and how to say it. Interesting. He finished. You puffed out your cheeks before returning to breakfast. Nothing I can do about that. If you find it so interesting, though, I can just say random Japanese words I know until you get annoyed. Immediately, his smirk dropped and appeared on your own face. He wasn't the only one who could act like a smartass. Neko, you said to prove your word. Bakugou's jaw clenched. Stop. Inu. Do not. Senpai! At this point, his eye twitched while he held back a growl, and while you had to focus on finishing breakfast, you couldn't help silently laughing at his expense. Too easy. You mouthed too low for your phone to pick up. Bakugou groaned and mumbled something under his breath before sitting down at the table. You didn't want to agitate him too much before spending the entire day with him, but it was his own fault for being such an easy target. After a few minutes, you finished breakfast and set out a couple of plates. This was the second time you cooked for Bakugou, and you really hoped he didn't hate it. Food's done, you said, while scooping a bit of everything onto your plate. You needed to eat quickly so you could shower and get ready to give yourself enough time before the park opened. While you sat down, Bakugou got up to plate his own food. It looked decent enough, similar to the breakfast you made a few days ago with several replacements. He had no clue what constituted theme park food here, or if he'd like it, so to be safe, he gave himself generous portions. Before sitting down, he also dug into the pantry and pulled out the bottle of hot sauce you bought. He watched you eye the bottle as he sat down, turning your nose up at it like last time. Bakugou smirked, but decided to taste the food before drowning it in sauce. Now you were staring, probably wondering silently what he thought of your cooking. Not bad, he thought after swallowing the first bite, but he still grabbed the hot sauce and poured a generous amount over everything. It was worth the look of horror on your face. I don't think it's that bad, you said, while stabbing a bite on your fork with slight aggression before stuffing it into your mouth. If you were allowed to annoy him, he'd do the same. It's edible, replied Bakugou, but it's not spicy. Not everything needs to burn up your taste buds, you retorted. Also, are you implying you're a better cook than me? Bakugou scoffed before taking another bite. Yeah, I am. Can you cook something other than breakfast food? With how tightly you gripped your fork, he thought it might bend under the pressure. If this was all it took to rile you up, then his day just got more entertaining. Yes, you emphasized. But you kept kicking me out of my own kitchen. I'll cook next time and prove it. You stuck your tongue out at him like a mocking child. Go ahead then, he challenged. If you wanted to compete with cooking just to watch him win with ease, he'd accept your bet. Back and forth banter continued throughout breakfast until you finished before him. I'm going to shower, get ready, then we can go, you said, while dumping your plate and dishes into the sink. You said while pointing in his direction, can wash dishes since you're dead set on things being fair. Bakugou's hands went out in a clear, what the fuck gesture with his mouth full of food as you walked past him and into your bedroom. Comes back to bite me in the ass, he mumbled, thinking to how he cooked dinner and you washed dishes over the past few days. When he finished his own meal and stood at the sink, he realized with a bit of shock how easily he'd let his guard down during that whole interaction. Either you were a tactically precise conversationalist, or his general vibe that you were the enemy finally disappeared. Only one of those options seemed slightly plausible. Don't act stupidly, he reminded himself, as warm water poured over his calloused hands, hardened and worn from quirk use and battle experience. Today would be a day of observance. His red eyes flickered upwards for a moment as you came out of your room with an armful of clothes and disappeared into the bathroom with a brief glance in his direction. You paused before stepping into the shower, once again considering how Bakugou stood in this very spot not long before. Don't think about it, this is just temporary, you told yourself before stepping into the hot water. At least he's tidy. You noticed he always set the bottles you bought him right back in the same spot and didn't move any of your own things. Well, your body wash bottle mysteriously moved to the opposite end of the shower, but you avoided thinking too hard on it. While feeling pensive under the warm water, you started to hum softly to yourself. Since you lived alone, it never bothered anyone if you sang in the shower, and it often made you calm either before or after doing something stressful. In this case, the thrill of taking Bakugou to an amusement park brought your nerves into your stomach. You never really sang in front of people. It wasn't even that you considered yourself a bad singer, necessarily, only that doing something in front of someone when it was normally just for yourself felt a bit vulnerable. After dressing, you looked at yourself in the mirror. If you were completely, candidly, insanely honest with yourself, you wanted to look cute today. Not just for the hot guy in your living room, but for yourself, too. Looking nice often made you feel more confident, and more confidence meant the likelihood that you said or did something dumb in front of Bakugou went down. Not like anything would ever happen, you whisper to yourself while putting on sunscreen, coating your lashes with mascara, and pulling your hair back a bit to keep it out of your face and off your neck. Hell, I don't even know if he's single. He didn't mention a relationship, but he doesn't seem the type to just blurt out personal stuff like that. The fact that he didn't seem to find you unbearable to be around, though, made you smile. Maybe he's just being civil because of the circumstances, but I'll take it. When you felt presentable, you went to open the door, but grabbed the sunscreen off the counter before walking into your living room. Bakugou sat on the couch, his hand popping off small sparks before letting them disappear when his eyes flickered up to you. Honestly, his stare sent shivers under your skin from how casually intense it was, but you kept your composure. You walked over and grabbed your phone. It was unmoved from where you left it, and opened up the translator app. Here, you said, extending the sunscreen to Bakugou. "If you don't want to get sunburned being outside all day." He raised an eyebrow but took the container, examining it in his hand before standing up.
"I don't burn."
His words contradicted the action of him walking into the bathroom to definitely not apply sunscreen, forcing you to roll your eyes at his dramatics. You grabbed a small backpack from your room and stuffed the essentials in it: keys, wallet, power bank, chapstick, etc. Before leaving, you grabbed a couple of extra items that caught your eye before closing your bedroom door.
"Hurry up,"
Bakugou groaned near the front door. You shook your head at his impatience before extending your hand towards him.
"The hell is this?"
"Sunglasses," you said bluntly while putting your nicer pair on top of your head. He got the shitty cheap pair, and you didn't feel too bad about it. "Don't know if you noticed, but people here don't naturally have red eyes. Someone might bother you with questions or something. Plus, the obvious sunny weather."
"Red eyes? The fuck? That's not just a natural eye color here."
You shook your head as he snatched the glasses from you and eyed them with scrutiny before looking at your own.
"Give me those."
"What? No, I saved up ages ago and bought these nice ones. You get the cheap ones." You stared him down as he silently challenged you for the nicer pair, but you matched his stubbornness. His lip twitched before turning away towards the front door and sliding the cheap plastic glasses onto his head, causing you to grin at the fact that you won this round. At the mention of red eyes, Bakugou wondered how the hell someone like Shoji or Ashido would manage here, where their physical traits were far more obvious and problematic in a world without quirks. Red eyes were common in his world, and no one batted much of an eye at extra limbs or a rainbow of skin tones. Here, though, no one had horns, or more than 2 eyes, or sharp teeth. No one he'd observed, anyway. In that respect, he was lucky to only be an emitter, else he really wouldn't be able to leave this apartment at all without causing a fuss. The thought reminded him that he had plans today.
"We go in or not?"
He watched you run around the apartment to make sure the lights were out before snatching up a bag and giving a thumbs up. You were a massive dork, that was for sure. "Ready!" Bakugou walked down the hallway while you locked your apartment door, following quickly behind. A cool breeze blew through the early morning air, the sky light blue and cloudless. If it rained today, he'd be pissed, but so far things looked good. Your car beeped when you unlocked it, but rather than slide into the back seat like on previous days, Bakugou seated himself in the front seat next to you. At this, he noticed you pause before closing the door behind you. "Tired of the back seat?" you asked, while situating your phone in the center console stand. Bakugou shrugged while sliding the borrowed sunglasses down onto his nose, taking notice of how you avoided eye contact and cleared your throat after speaking.
"I like to see where I'm going. Want to make sure you don't drive into oncoming traffic or something,"
he replied without a hint of sarcasm. You huffed through your nose. "I'll have you know I'm an excellent driver. I've never been in a wreck, and I've never gotten a ticket, so there, smartass." You started the engine and adjusted your own sunglasses, as if trying to look far cooler than you actually were. The attempt didn't work. "I'll have to use an app to get there, so the drive might be a bit silent on conversation. You can turn on the radio, though, if you want." Bakugou decided that a silent drive worked for him, because then he could really pay attention to wherever the hell you were driving him. The thought that you'd drive him to some faraway and hidden villain hideout seemed ridiculous, but until he saw the damned park for himself, anything felt possible. In addition, he hated following behind anyone and preferred standing in front. But since the front here would be the hood of the car, the passenger seat would suffice. He could also keep a closer eye on you and pick apart your idiosyncrasies, but he'd keep that detail subtle. The drive proved fairly boring, with little in the way of interesting landmarks or noticeable scenery. Bakugou did end up messing with the radio, but he knew none of the songs, eventually setting for some station stuck on some kind of outdated rock music, judging by the guitar work and rhythm. He wasn't the biggest fan of pop, so it was better than nothing. Something he did notice, however, were your small bouts of road rage. True to your word, you never seemed to veer off of the lines or fail to stop at a light or sign. But the way you gripped the steering wheel and clenched your jaw when someone else did something stupid almost made him burst out laughing. Compared to your height, the tense energy you gave off while driving was a stark contrast. For some dumb reason, he found this incredibly funny, though Bakugou resisted snickering out loud. Eventually, the horizon in front of him burst with pops of swirling color and twisted metal, roller coasters. After being in a car for so long, Bakugou was ready to stretch his legs, but furrowed his brows in confusion when you turned into a parking lot about half a mile away. He narrowed his eyes with suspicion, since there should be a parking lot near the actual park.
Oi, teme wa doko ni iku no?
You held up a hold-on finger before turning into a small shopping strip with restaurants and stores, parking near the back before switching your phone back to the translator app and turning to him. Even behind the sunglasses, you could feel the distrust oozing off his dark glare and tried to ease his wariness. Yes, you started. The park is over there, but parking costs like almost as much as the tickets, and I'm not paying for that shit, so we get to walk. That cool? Almost immediately, you watched the tension leave his shoulders.
Whatever, just hurry up.
He grumbled before getting out of the car. Crisis averted, you said to yourself, before hopping out as well and locking the doors. You watched Bakugou scan the scenery as if on a mission to find anything out of the ordinary, though he didn't know the area, so how he could know the difference between normal and bizarre was lost on you. Without a word, he started walking, pale blonde hair bouncing in the early morning wind, hands stuffed into the pockets of his jeans. Unfairly handsome, you thought, before catching up to him. Today would be a test in keeping your shit together with nowhere to hide. Other people seemed to have the same idea of parking elsewhere and walking, their sun hats, sneakers, and casual attire giving off a tourist vibe. Despite being a tourist himself, though, Bakugou gave off an aura of sidewalk ownership, his broad shoulders dipping and swaying with every step he took. While he walked, you went ahead and bought 2 tickets on the park's website to avoid waiting in line. There was an online discount too, so score on that deal. A power bank sat in your bag, but you didn't want to use it until later since it was still so early. The translator app ate up your phone's battery while open, so if Bakugou chose to remain silent during this walk towards the park entrance, you wouldn't object. As you neared the park, the sounds of screeching metal echoed in your ears as the coaster closest to the entrance ran test runs before they opened the gates in approximately 5 minutes. Excited children ran by with already exhausted-looking parents as lines formed in front of the turnstiles. The entrance was painted with bright colors and plenty of park branding, making it easy to spot from the highway. Bakugou stalled before the entrance, hanging back behind the growing crowd, head swiveling to take in his new surroundings. Sensing he might have something to say, you took out your phone and stood next to him, careful to keep some distance between the two of you. Accidentally brushing up against his arm would surely send a jolt up your spine. So, you started, but Bakugou interrupted.
We go on the biggest coaster first. Don't argue,
he stated with an air of finality. His plan forced a big grin onto your face. I wasn't planning on it.
Good. Better keep up with those short legs of yours.
With that snarky comment, he continued forward towards the entrance gate, leaving you behind him once more. Smartass, you muttered to yourself. I can keep up, no problem. Bakugou heard you pad up next to him, his defenses on high within the growing crowd of energetic strangers. More often than not, crowds annoyed the hell out of him. But if it meant getting out of your damn apartment to let out pent-up energy, he'd tolerate it. Or by the end of the day, he'd want to scream and blow something up. Only the future would tell. Security personnel wearing matching park uniforms sorted through bags and ushered everyone through what Bakugou assumed were metal detectors, something he knew of but rarely saw back home. Traditional weapons such as guns or knives were uncommon since quirks could be, and were, used as weapons themselves, so security in public places and events focused more on suppression and reaction rather than prevention. He watched the woman scan your phone before ushering the two of you through the beeping detectors. Of course, he had nothing on him, not even a set of keys or wallet, so there were no issues. A rack sat nearby with the same branding displayed outside, full of folded brochures. Bakugou grabbed one and opened it up, revealing a map of the park. He couldn't read the text, but the simplicity of the illustration seemed understandable even to children. You walked over and peered down at the map through your sunglasses. The sun blazed overhead, and Bakugou stood silently grateful once again for your generosity in his own pair.
Point it out. Which one's the biggest?
He demanded. You hummed for a moment, scanning the map as he watched children who could never outrun him jog towards rides with a mild scowl. Impatience sat on his shoulders, like clinging static. This one, you answered finally, pointing down to a coaster about halfway across the park. The behemoth. It's... Without a word, Bakugou closed the map, thrusted in your direction to grab, and immediately started walking towards his destination. You fell in line beside him, but he remained focused on pinpointing the roller coaster painted in bold, black and red to mirror the picture on the map. It wasn't long before the colors came into view, the roar of wheels on metal and excited screams echoing towards his left. Bakugou looked up to see a towering hill that stretched far into the sky, the sun behind the metal peak obscuring the apex of the ride. He walked faster, excitement starting to bubble under his skin at the thrill of wind in his hair and adrenaline in his veins. 4 days without fighting or using his quirk caused far too much pent-up energy, and if riding a damn roller coaster was the only way to ease some tension, he'd hop right to the front of the line. Despite Bakugou's quip at keeping up due to your height, you managed to keep pace with him just fine. If he started running or sprinting somewhere, then you might have issues. As the two of you neared the winding metal gate leading up to the coaster platform, you peeked up through your lashes and almost faltered in your step to see Bakugou actually smiling. It was subtle, unlike most things Bakugou did, but your blood raced under your skin at the thought of Bakugou actually enjoying himself here. You followed him through the snake-like bars, until he got impatient enough to start hopping over them with surprising ease since the line didn't reach back this far. "The fuck?" you mumbled before attempting to catch up to him by climbing through the bars, knowing you couldn't leap over them nearly as easily. Bakugou, to your surprise, actually looked back and caught you midway through a crawl. You must have looked stupid because he let out one breathy laugh before snapping his fingers in your direction. You flipped him off before almost toppling to the ground.
"Hayaka!"
he called over the metal bars before turning around to continue his stride towards the end of the line. After a few seconds, you caught up to Bakugou and stood behind him in the line. With hands stuffed casually into his pockets, he quirked a brow at your mild distress at exercising this early in the morning. The line wasn't too long, luckily, and moved quickly enough as people eventually sorted into smaller lines depending on which seats they wanted. With a silent understanding of the system, Bakugou filed into the line, waiting for the very front of the coaster because, of course, he would. Considering how much he disliked people walking in front of him, and his apparent affection for being first in everything he did, no other row seemed reasonable. Your eyes followed each train as it screeched to a halt in the loading dock. Before the safety bars flew up, groups of windswept guests with wide smiles and excited giggles filed towards the exit, and a new group sat impatiently for the cycle to resume once more. Bakugou's tapping foot caught your attention, his eagerness and impatience obvious as you attempted not to stare at his striking silhouette. With broad shoulders covered by one of the few articles of clothing he came here with, and a strong jawline like cut diamond, even the stupidly cheap glasses you gave him looked designer. If he wasn't a hero, he could easily be a model with how effortlessly handsome he appeared while doing absolutely nothing. The thought made your ears burn as you pointedly avoided eye contact, even though his attention seemed solely focused on the ride and not your intrusive thoughts. His pulse buzzed beneath his skin as Bakugou stood next in line for the ride. He'd meticulously watched people exit the train for reactions, and every single one came off with ear-splitting grins and hair that seemed mussed from a blustery draft of concentrated airy adrenaline. Having been a teenager the last time he visited a park, he wondered how different things would feel as an adult compared to the thrill of battling villains on a daily basis. While waiting in line, he watched you as well. You sat on top of the bar separating the lines, feet dangling and occasionally bouncing off the flimsy metal, causing it to echo into the feet-worn concrete of the platform. Even he could see the premature excitement rolling off your posture with a slight grin. You looked his way and, because he suddenly felt uncharacteristically awkward being caught staring, Bakugou turned away just as the gate opened to let the waiting riders through. Since he was first in line, because of course he was, Bakugou slid to the end and immediately hopped into the seat. his legs dangling over the edge of the floorless coaster. He watched you slide past him and put up your bag, pausing to turn around and hold out your hand to him.
"Nani?"
he asked with a bit of impatience, staring at your hand questioningly. You took off your sunglasses and waved them around until he got the hint to hand them over, lest they fly off into oblivion. Sure, they were cheap, according to your own words, but they weren't his property, and losing them would ruin this whole play-nice deal. After stuffing both pairs of glasses and your bag away into a cubby area towards the exit, you slid in next to him and hopped with an amusing amount of difficulty just to reach the seat before pulling down the safety bar. Poking fun at your height could prove entertaining for the rest of the day. An attendant came around to check the safety harnesses, and for a brief moment, Bakugou considered what to do in case this thing flew off the tracks. Were safety regulations up to code here? He could save himself by using his quirk and quick reflexes, but everyone else, you included, totally screwed. His brain was wired to consider the worst-case scenario because he'd observed the worst-case scenario with his own eyes at least once. His crimson eyes cut to his right briefly, though your silhouette sat mostly hidden behind the wide restraints. He came here to try and fucking relax and let off steam, not stress about a highly unlikely scenario. When the train full of people jerked forward, hypothetical tragedy flew out of the window as premature adrenaline filled his veins, his feet dangling below as he gripped the metal bars across his shoulders. "Oh God, I forgot how steep it was," you muttered as you rose higher and higher into the air. Strangers behind you laughed and talked as the wind picked up with each click of moving chains, excitement buzzing in the thin air. You looked left and saw Bakugou's strong hands bracing against the cold vertical bars, his fingers drumming impatiently. This was the closest you'd ever been to him for a period of time longer than a second or two. But rather than focus on that, you turned your attention back towards the hill of painted metal that plateaued into a steep drop. The view on the right up was glorious, honestly. With a clear blue sky and fluffy clouds overhead, it provided the perfect vantage point to see across not only the park but the town as well. The highway you drove on stretched below, with moving cars that ducked in and out of filling parking lots as people eased from Saturday morning sleep and into the day's activities. Leaves of green danced below as well, softening the blow of industrialization from office buildings and strip malls. Before you could focus more on the scene, though, Bakugou's laugh to your left brought you back to full attention as the full brunt of sitting in the front row hit you while staring at a steepening vertical drop. The plateau below your feet now gone, leaving open air as your only cushion. Oh, you and about a dozen others screamed as the car toppled forward, gaining speed like a revving race car. Wind whipped your face and hair as the whirl of screeching metal echoed in your ears. After the initial shock, you couldn't help but laugh with every twist and turn and loop, your blood rushing like a moving rapid in your veins as you struggled to keep your eyes open in the face of cold rushing air. And just like that, it was over, when the wheels jerked to slow the speed of the train as you pulled back into the station. The grin spread across your face wouldn't ease, not helped at all by Bakugou's frenzied hoot next to you as one of his fists pumped in the air like a child winning a game of tag. As soon as the safety bars flew up, Bakugou hopped out with a distinct pep as though squaring up for a fight. You hopped down as well and attempted to tame your wind-mussed hair, but you must have looked kind of dazed because Bakugou turned around and snorted at you with that handsome smirk of his before heading for the exit. Well, he seems happy. Imagine Bakugou happy? Wow, you said to yourself, unable to feel a tingle of pride at having suggested a successful outing destination. You grabbed your bag from the waiting area and followed him out and down the exit path. Holy shit. That was just what he needed to get his day started on a literal high-flying note. Bakugou genuinely had fun on the damn thing, and the view from the top wasn't too bad either. It was so damn tempting to let his quirk pop off, But with so many people around, the risk of someone making a panic over a guy with firecracker palms didn't seem worth it. A small booth sat to the left of the exit with a bored-looking employee avoiding everyone around her while focused solely on the phone in her hand. Screens sat at the back suspended up on the wall, each displaying a different section of the ride. Photos, he thought, while curiously looking at the mixture of petrified and comically posed pictures. You stood beside him and looked up as well. Oh, that girl looks like she's about to barf. Oh! There! Wait. Bakugou followed the line of your pointing finger and snickered. As soon as he saw the flash of the camera, because of course he'd never closed his eyes on these rides, he posed with a fat middle finger and crooked grin. He really was a brat at heart. Really? You shook your head disapprovingly, but the small quirk of your mouth told him you thought it was kind of funny, at least. Here. Your voice to his right brought him back to attention as he looked down to see you holding out his borrowed glasses. He snatched them up and slid them on, mouth opening to ask for the map when a towering column of color jutting up into the sky caught his attention. Nah, fuck the map. He knew exactly where he wanted to go next. With renewed vigor, Bakugou walked with purpose across the warming pavement, weaving in and out of wandering families, only slowing down for you to catch up with those stubby legs of yours before you got lost like a wandering child. It wasn't long before he stood in front of the point of interest, stabbing towards the clouds, a tall tower whose sole purpose seemed to be dropping patrons straight down a vertical drop with unpredictable timing. Yatta! He whistled while staring up through the shaded glasses. Before heading into the line, longer compared to the first ride, he turned around to see you staring upwards. He caught your attention enough to pull out your phone for him to speak up. Scared? He asked, with an obviously mocking tone. You waved your hand as if to dismiss his accusation like an annoying fly. No, you emphasized. Of course not. Just glad you picked this one before I ate lunch. You trotted in front of him towards the end of the line, leaving him behind with a swish of your hair. Your back-talking ate at him like an itching mosquito, but he'd finally decided that he preferred this attitude to that of a pushover. Bakugou stood impatiently while leaning against the metal bars, arms crossed over his chest, trying to drown out the looped music playing through the speakers under the covered walkway. You stood opposite him, messing with your phone, typing away on the screen. It wasn't his business to ask what you were doing, even if mild curiosity pulled on the back of his mind. It was then he noticed someone behind you nearly leaning over your shoulder, as if to peer down at the device in your hand. Bakugou narrowed his eyes at the man until you caught sight of him and leaned away with a startled look. Excuse me? You asked while shutting off your phone screen. Was this weirdo trying to read your texts? His crooked mouth contorted into an unnerving grin that made your skin crawl.
Hey, just curious. What's your name?
He asked, while following your attempted lean out of his space. A slimy shiver ran down your spine, knowing this conversation wasn't headed in a good direction. Leave me alone. You turned away and stuffed your phone back into your bag, trying to ignore the man. But with his height, he kept leaning over you like a circling vulture, prodding with questions you had no intention of answering. Anger and annoyance bubbled up in your chest at dealing with this today of all days, when you just wanted to ride some damn rides. But just as you were about to round on him and screech in his face, a shadow stepped forward, followed by a sturdy foot that rattled the metal bars at your back like a gong. Imasugu tachisare yaro. Bakugou ground out in slurred Japanese while leaning over the bar into the creep's face, jaw set like hard stone and broad shoulders unbending like steel girders. You had no idea what he said, but it sounded threatening nonetheless, the cut of his voice like a honed knife. Others around observed the scene with dramatic interest but said nothing, resolving to keep to themselves rather than get involved. You moved away quickly to see the source of your annoyance jump back at Bakugou's sudden invasion, glancing nervously between you and Bakugou before muttering something and turning away.
Overprotective boyfriends wasn't doing nothing.
You heard him grit out before leaning against the bar farthest away from you. Immediately, you felt your neck heat up as Bakugou stood back with a scoff and retreated back to his previous spot, eyes glaring through your sunglasses at the creep as if daring him to do something about it. You were really damn glad for that language barrier right about now. Boyfriend? You thought with panic at the man's horribly inaccurate assumption. Today wasn't a date, and Bakugou definitely absolutely was not your boyfriend. Your heart raced in your chest, and jaw hung limp as you tried not to stare at the hero next to you. But when he glanced your way, you froze up and only managed a weak "arigato" as you attempted desperately to keep your hands from shaking. He just shrugged his shoulders as though his actions meant nothing and nodded for you to turn around and close the gap between you and the end of the line as people moved forward while you stood still. The last thing you expected was for Bakugou to observe your uncomfortable behavior and act on it. But he was a hero, right? And he'd never done anything perverse in the source material, unlike the Purple Menace. Maybe it wasn't so much out of character as it was just unanticipated. Prompted by the creep's words, your thoughts ran back to your monologue in the shower this morning. You had absolutely no clues about Bakugou's relationship status, not that he'd mentioned something so personal to you anyway. Still, you had to wonder, did he have a partner back home? Was he single? Was he even interested in romance, with hero work keeping him constantly busy with danger and excitement? He spoke about his friends and colleagues, but didn't mention anyone special. Oh my god, you thought. What if he's dating another hero? What if he's dating Kirishima? Or Deku? Or Uraraka? The shipping community would go absolutely ballistic if any of those were true. But of course, you couldn't ask that without seeming overly curious about something that really wasn't your business. Bakugou watched as you avoided leaning on the bar separating the winding line of the ride into evenly spaced rows. Posture stiff and guarded. He wasn't stupid. He'd observed enough nasty behavior from Mineta at UA to notice someone with ill intentions, and the pissed-off look on your face right before he stepped forward just sold him on his hunch. It wasn't a big deal. If someone was acting villainous, Bakugou stepped forward like a magnet driven by instinct. If it was anyone else, he would have done the same thing. He kept his eye on the creep as they inched forward through the line, but every time they caught sight of each other, Bakugou sneered and the man turned away. When the gate finally opened to release a new batch of thrill junkies, Bakugou noticed the man from before scuffle off to the opposite side of the circular platform. Once again, the two of you sat next to each other. It wasn't like he cared who the hell he sat next to, but it was convenient. Also, he wanted to see your face when this thing dropped. After an attendant came by to check the safety harnesses, Bakugou heard an enthusiastic announcer over the PA system.
Welcome, welcome everyone! Are you all ready to scream?
He didn't understand the words, but by the cheers from around the platform, he assumed the disembodied voice was giving some sort of pep talk. He looked over to see you grip the safety bars before the ride started to tick upwards and spin simultaneously as the voice continued to blare through the speakers. He rose up, 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 taking in the view of not only the park, but the surrounding area as well.
Be calm, everyone, as you rise into the sky at a height just below that of the Behemoth, the tallest ride in the park.
Eventually, the spinning circle of occupied seats came to a stop at the apex, continually rotating at an ominously slow speed. Bakugou then realized he had no idea when they were going to drop. Now aware that the unpredictable timing must be part of the thrill, he couldn't help but grin as his feet kicked in midair.
What we're gonna do is start a countdown. How's that sound? Well, you can't answer, so I'll answer for you.
The voice paused, and Bakugou swore he heard an ominous chuckle through the speakers.
10, 9.
Oh shit, you said to his right, catching his attention. Even from this angle, he could see the tendons in your hands stretch across the shoulder harness. Not scared, huh?
8, 7.
Bakugou unclenched his teeth to keep from biting his tongue, as excitement buzzed under his skin.
6, 5.
Then the ride dropped. Bakugou's stomach almost flew up into his throat as you screamed. After only a few seconds, he landed back on safe ground. once again feeling a thrill under his skin. Everyone around him, you included, babbled excitedly as the safety bars went up. That asshole announcer, dropping the damn thing before the countdown was over, you said while hopping down and shaking the wind from your hair before looking his way with a dumb smile. Seems like you'd forgotten about the creep from the line and gained back a bit of excitement. Good. If you were in a good mood, it'd make the day run smoother. He ran a hand through his hair before following everyone else towards the exit. As the day wore on, crowds gathered and split throughout the park, gravitating towards rides like bugs to a glowing lantern, forcing you to weave between sprinting children and distracted teenagers. At one point, you passed a photo booth bursting with high school students in matching shirts branded with their school name, giggling and laughing behind the curtain. The scene reminded you of taking your own pictures with friends who moved away, or you grew apart from in a now abandoned mall. A nostalgic smile playing on your lips before the booth slipped out of sight. You and Bakugou rode one more coaster before deciding it was time for some lunch. Pulling out the map, you scanned it for food stands nearby, while standing under an area littered with large umbrellas offering shade to tired guests. Besides spicy, do you care about what kind of food it is? You asked while holding up your phone. With so many people around, it'd be difficult to actually talk to him while walking or waiting in line.
Obviously, I mostly know Japanese food, but I'd assume park food is either very generic or very bizarre. Just hurry up and pick some place. If it sucks, I'll just blame you.
Your mouth thinned as he smirked. This was, at least, by far, the most you'd seen him smile since he got here, even if half the time it was at your expense. The manga rarely showed him smiling outside of a fight, so he must have figured out how to chill the hell out a little and enjoy a thing or two. Fine, smartass. How about... You lowered the map to see a food stand right in front of you. Perfect. Here, I'll be back. With Bakugou now holding onto the folded map, you walked forward and stood in line, scanning over the menu hung up above the ordering window. After a minute, you looked back to see Bakugou lounging at a table, staring off at nothing in particular with his arms folded to appear notably aloof. So far, the day had flown by without any hiccups. No bad moods, no yelling, no arguments. Hopefully, you could keep up the pace. The sweaty-looking man behind the counter slid 2 orders to you, pointing off to the side for condiments. They didn't offer any spicy entrees, but as a substitute, you grabbed some hot sauce packets. Better than nothing. You sat down opposite Bakugou and slid him the food, which he looked at with a quirked brow, before you rained down a handful of hot sauce packets like sloppy hailstones.
Nani koren da yo?
He asked with an exasperated gesture. You pulled out your phone and set it between the two of you. They didn't have anything spicy, so hot sauce packets will have to do. He scoffed before watching you eat the first bite, dumping 3 packets all over the contents of his plate without a second thought. After making sure the surface area was thoroughly coated, Bakugou shoved a forkful into his own mouth as you waited to see whether or not he'd spit it out. His face went through a bizarre range of expressions before settling back into neutral, his fork dipping back down for a second bite. So, if I'm to blame if you hated it, what happens if you like it? You asked, just to be snarky. Bakugou looked at you from across the table, the sun overhead glaring off his cheap sunglasses like a solar flare. You really were terrible at this no-staring thing.
I'll blame the guy that made the food, moron.
He shot back, jerking his head towards the food stand. Did you just call me a moron?
What if I did?
Do you call everyone insulting nicknames?
What if I do?
To keep from extending a brewing argument, you scooped more food into your own mouth in an attempt to ignore him. Instead, you looked right over his left shoulder and paused, your eyes glued to a kid jumping around with his family at another table. He had a bright green shirt on with Midoriya's face plastered across the middle. You promptly choked on your bite of food. You completely forgot about fucking merch. You didn't own any anime shirts yourself, but at least one kid walking around a crowded theme park on the weekend was bound to wear something recognizable. Fuck.
Oi, you dying?
Bakugou asked with a nonchalant tone while you struggled to swallow the food lodged in your throat. You quickly grabbed a bottle of water you bought earlier from your bag and gulped down enough to breathe properly once more. When you briefly looked up, the boy and his family were gone. Bakugou turned around to follow your line of sight and luckily saw nothing as well. Just, went down the wrong way. I'm fine, you said with a few more coughs. He hummed as though he didn't quite believe you.
Maybe don't suck down your food like a vacuum.
You flipped him off. He just looked amused. Before taking extra care in finishing your own food at a slower pace, you'd keep your eyes peeled for anything else that might tip him off, though you weren't sure what the hell to do about it if that happened. The two of you spent the remainder of the afternoon riding every roller coaster in the park, though half the time was spent either walking around or standing in line. Bakugou kept his eyes trained on you a majority of the time, watching for any more odd behavior. Your little choking incident seemed slightly unbelievable, but he had no evidence to back up claims of deception. Maybe you saw someone you knew or thought you knew. Maybe it was nothing of consequence, or maybe it was. He couldn't say just yet. One of the rides was a coaster that flew backward, something he'd never ridden back in Japan, even as a kid. Bakugou valued his sight and being able to see exactly what lay ahead, but with the ability stripped as he sat in the front row, which was now the back, Bakugou felt a microscopic bubble of anxiety in the pit of his stomach.
It's just a stupid ride,
he told himself as the safety bars came down. He felt the cold metal of the safety bar under his palm like ice and took a deep breath through a clenched jaw, exhaling just as the train jerked backward, not noticing you glance at the strain of his knuckles with silent concern. When the ride settled back into the docking platform, Bakugou was the first to exit and only bothered slowing down when he noticed you trailing behind. As the sun started to set, casting an orange glow across the park like a translucent mandarin blanket, exhaustion crept in slowly but surely. Sleeping tonight might actually end up being halfway decent after exerting most of his pent-up energy, and if he woke up back home, then... Bakugou's steps faltered for only a moment as he considered the fact that he'd been so distracted by everything today that remaining stuck here in this world and being pissed about it hadn't crossed his mind since this morning. No new theories, no explanations, no answers. The thought of trying to make the day into a fairly relaxing one actually worked. Maybe too well. But he still wasn't home, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. Bakugou? Your voice, smaller than usual, caught his attention, snapping his eyes to his right as you followed along a covered path, light streaming down through meticulously woven strands of growing vines and flowers draped across a tall tunnel made of wire. Are you okay? Were you concerned about him of all things? No, really, he fucking wasn't okay, but ending the day in a bad mood, especially when he'd eventually be stuck in the damn car with you for half an hour on the way back to your place, made his stomach sour.
Fine. Just damn fine.
Bakugou walked ahead of you. His shoulders appeared stiff, and for the first time today, his bitter disposition returned after what you thought was a successful day in having fun. Imagine having fun with Bakugou Katsuki. But you knew prying would get you nowhere, so instead you followed him silently and hoped to figure out a plan to see that smile of his one more time. He seemed to be headed in the direction of the first coaster you rode. The park, bustling with loud families and boisterous teenagers earlier, now seemed relatively empty as night set in. Many of the rides housed lights strung up on the metal trains, streaking stars in the night sky as they flew across the tracks. A tall Ferris wheel spun slowly against the dark sky on the opposite side of the park, still visible from where you stood. Honestly, it was kind of romantic in a way. Though you said nothing, you covered your mouth anyway in embarrassment at the thought of this whole outing feeling mildly amorous. Of course. This wasn't romantic. Nothing romantic about it. Definitely not. Your intrusive thoughts were interrupted by a coaching voice as you passed by a row of vintage-looking prize booths.
Step right up. Come on now, test your strength, win a prize. Yes, sir. Yes, you.
A man dressed up in some circus-type version of the normal park uniform, complete with off-center top hat, loudly banged a cane on the outside of his booth as the two of you passed before pointing the stick directly at Bakugou's passing silhouette.
You look like a strong lad. What you say, huh? Win a prize for that lovely lady?
You stopped and blushed at the implication. The suggested relationship between the two of you inescapable even to park employees, as Bakugou turned towards the booth, body highlighted by the artificial glow of fluorescent lamps hanging from the top of the booth.
Huh?
He said, with a bit of a snarl, glaring at the man who didn't seem at all intimidated. The evening darkness hid your warm face, while Bakugou was too entranced by this provoking booth operator to notice.
That got your attention, Prove your strength, knock down the targets, and win a prize. Or are you scared, good sir? The fire in your eyes tells me you enjoy a challenge.
The man gestured to 4 moving rows of targets, all different sizes and sliding across hidden rails at various speeds. Even though Bakugou couldn't understand the man's goading words, he took a step forward as though squaring up for a fight. "Shit," you muttered, looking between the booth running with a sly grin and Bakugou, whose hands inched out of his pockets. If he blew up the booth, there'd be nowhere to run and security would.
お前は何だと？挑戦か？ボールをくれて。俺はターゲットを殺そう。
Bakugou's slurred Japanese was laced with fire, making the hair on the back of your neck stand on end. All you could do was stand by and watch, nervous that trying to pull him away would actually escalate the scene playing out in front of your eyes. The man looked confused before he shrugged with an easy grin.
Don't know what you said, but I think that means yes in my language.
With the top of his cane against a small red button on the wall, the man pressed down and a set of equally bright red balls rolled to a stop in front of Bakugou. You stood behind him as Bakugou picked up one of the balls, rolling it around in the palm of his hand before tossing it up and down a few times to gauge its weight and size. Bakugou grinned deviously, his feet separating into a stance as he rolled his shoulders. The scene played out eerily similar to the physical strength exam during his class's first day at UA. He wound up his right arm, eyeing the targets like a hunter ready to pounce on its prey, before stepping forward and letting loose a deafening
死ね!
The ball whistled through the air like a rocket, but you thanked whatever theme park god was looking down on you when you realized Bakugou didn't activate his quirk during the throw, though you swore you saw a small trail of smoke whiz past the startled man in the booth. The ball hit the target perfectly in the middle. The grin stretched across Bakugou's face never faltered.
Boy, oh boy, you got quite an arm there.
The surprised employee stuttered as Bakugou picked up another ball. This was just what he needed right now, to let off some steam in a mildly, non-violent way that hurt no one in the process. Bakugou had no clue what the hell this ugly asshole shouted, but he knew a challenge when issued directly to his face. If he couldn't punch something, then throwing a ball as hard as he could without using his quirk and drawing unnecessary attention to himself seemed like the next best thing. He didn't notice you standing slack-jawed behind him as Bakugou wound up his arm for a second time and lobbed the ball across the length of the stand, hitting yet another target square in the middle. A satisfying accompanied a telling Bakugou he might have broken the damn thing. Well, hold on now. The nervous-looking man stuttered when Bakugou picked up a third ball. He wasted no time in delivering yet another bullseye. Fuck, it felt good to let go of his inhibitions, even if it was just throwing a stupid ball at a cheap target.
All right, well, time to close up. Here you go. Good job there. Have a good night. Come back another time.
The booth's operator's words slurred together as many things happened in a very quick succession. He pressed a button, and the remaining balls disappeared into a hole, dropping down into who knows where, before shoving a small stuffed toy into Bakugou's startled arms. A closing shield similar to those seen in abandoned malls came down in front of his face with a snap, effectively making the booth look abandoned. "What the fuck was that about?" you said behind him. Somehow, Bakugou had completely forgotten about you, his concentration stacked and focused on breaking something and letting off internalized frustration. Looking back over his shoulder, he saw your eyes glance between the now closed booth and himself, with a look of confused awe before breaking out into some bizarre grin, your hands coming up excitedly. Bakugou, that was crazy! You scared the shit out of that guy with your throws, and you hit every target right in the middle. I knew you were strong, obviously, but that was pretty cool, I gotta say. Your arms waved around frantically, apparently mimicking his throw, but with terrible form and balance. Even though he couldn't understand a damn word you said, none of it seemed malicious or mocking. For the briefest of moments, a wave of secondhand embarrassment hit as remnants of the earlier park crowd passed by and stared at your odd behavior. When you finally calmed down and looked at him with a smile, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. If you truly weren't villainous, his suspicions merely a low simmer at this point. You were at a minimum entertaining, which was more than he could say about most strangers he came into contact with. Your eyes glanced down at his hands, and only then did he notice the thing he was holding, a stuffed animal with a polka dot bow, slightly paled on the ears and tummy from hanging up in a sunlit booth. He didn't want or need this. He just wanted the satisfaction of winning at the stupid game, which he obviously did. With his free hand, Bakugou pointed his thumb over his shoulder towards the towering coaster the two of you first rode on this morning. You followed his finger and, understanding his intentions, nodded. He then turned on his heel and tossed the stuffed animal behind his back, not really caring what happened to it. You ran forward behind him and caught the stuffed animal before it hit the ground, running your thumb along the soft and puffy cheeks. "It's cute, at least," you said while stuffing the prize into your bag before catching up to Bakugou, your phone now out to talk to him properly. Just leaving it on the ground didn't seem right. Plus, he'd won it. Not for you or anything. No, certainly not. It didn't mean anything to him, obviously. Just a toy. That's all it was. Bakugou seemed to be in a much better mood as the two of you walked, his scowl forgotten and demeanor lighter. Maybe he just needed to let off some steam, though you still weren't sure what put him in a bad mood in the first place. "After this, do you want to leave?" "Ugh, I think the park is closing soon anyway," you said with a yawn while standing in the short line for the ride.
Tired already? Maybe the adrenaline will wake you up since you have to drive us back.
Truth be told, fatigue was setting in for him as well, but you didn't need to know that. He was also starving.
Yeah, after this thing we can go and eat.
"Food," you said longingly, feeling a bit of drool pool in your mouth. Lunch was hours ago, so the mention of dinner made your stomach rumble audibly, causing you to cover it up with a fake-as-hell cough, making him smirk. Once again, you were awful at hiding what you were thinking. He could practically see the imaginary food drifting in front of your vision as he moved forward in the line. Riding the same coaster twice in one day, once in the morning and again under the cover of night, seemed to round out everything into a satisfactory conclusion. The wind in his face gave Bakugou a burst of energy, and looking to his right, it appeared to do the same to you as he followed illuminated signs toward the exit gates. The yellow buzz of street lamps flooded the sidewalk as the two of you walked, leaving the amusement park behind. Aside from his sour mood that passed surprisingly quickly, he'd actually had a decent time today. The crowds got annoyingly loud at times, sure, but he chose the damn place, so complaining did him no good. Other than that, though, Bakugou considered worse things to occupy his time. He still had no answers on how to get back home, but sulking and letting the anger bubble up like a pot ready to spill did nothing productive for his train of thought. And what about you? His assumption that you were an eccentric weirdo was proven correct. You laughed at the dumbest things while somehow managing to keep up with his quick pace from one ride to the next, enjoying the adrenaline rush as much as he did, and even though conversation wasn't frequent due to the noise level of the park, you still understood his gestures and mannerisms well enough. Did he want to get the fuck back home? Obviously. Was today a complete waste of time? No. The parking lot where your car sat untouched looked empty, for the most part, aside from a beat-up-looking dark green van, a white car with far too many ugly bumper stickers, and an out-of-place sports car near the front. He suppressed a yawn as you unlocked the car. Damn, he was more tired than he had assumed. Food? Yes, food. I'm not cooking, by the way. Way too tired. You said next to him. Were you implying he should cook? Bakugou scoffed and opened his mouth to answer before a blinking sign along the strip of mostly closed shops and restaurants caught his attention. His legs propelled him forward as his red eyes scanned over a sign in Japanese. Bakugou? A place that served Japanese food.
Holy shit.
He thought to himself, as a craving for familiarity washed over him like a wave. It was probably cheap and couldn't compare to the real deal in Japan, but he'd take it. Now, all he had to do was, "Do you want to eat there?" Your voice to his left made him turn, your eyes looking up at the sign as well. Looks like they close in... 30 minutes. Better hurry up then? You started walking towards the front door, glancing back after a moment to see him standing there like an idiot with a look that questioned your assumed answer to his silence. Bakugou jogged forward and practically shoved you through the door to provide non-verbal feedback. The place was empty aside from one older-looking man at a booth slurping down a steaming bowl of soup. The walls were lined with generic and sun-faded posters in Japanese, noodles and rice and skewers of meat illustrated with digital brushstrokes and appetizing colors. I've never been here before, never really over on this part of town, you said to yourself as Bakugou wasted no time in walking forward to find a menu. Food, you remembered. They had food here. Hopefully, it tasted as delicious as the aroma coming from the hidden kitchen. Welcome, hello! A man with jet black hair and wrinkles lining his eyes and mouth stood behind the counter, a heavy Japanese accent lining his words.
Nihongo wakarimasu ka?
Bakugou asked with shining eagerness in his eyes. You realized this was the first time meeting another Japanese person here, someone who might be able to understand him without the use of a phone app. The man's eyebrows shot up before he broke out into a wide grin. Ah, hai! Anata wa Nihon shushin desu ka? Almost immediately, Bakugou bombarded the poor guy with his native language, gesturing energetically with his hands at nothing and no one in particular. You pulled your phone away, grabbed a menu, and stepped to the side to let the two men talk about, well, you weren't sure, but judging by Bakugou's enthusiasm at talking with someone else in Japanese, it must have been engaging. It was kind of cute to see him like that too, but you never tell him that. After a minute of picking out what you wanted, the menu had both your language and Japanese translations. A snap brought your head up to see Bakugou gesturing for you to order. He must have already told the man what he wanted. You told him your order and paid while Bakugou sat down at a booth facing the parking lot. You make a cute couple, the man behind the register whispered, leaning down so only you could hear. Immediately, your whole face felt burnt as blood flooded your cheeks and you desperately avoided eye contact. No, we're not. You shook your head vigorously rather than finishing the sentence. He looked apologetic at having misconstrued your relationship, but you tried not to make a big deal out of it. It's fine, don't worry. Gomen. Sorry. Food will be ready shortly. Arigato, you replied, making the tension in his shoulder ease a little before you sat down opposite Bakugou with a sigh and slid your phone to the center of the table. 3 separate people assumed he was your boyfriend today. 3 too many according to your emotional sanity. Bakugou looked at you questioningly from across the table.
The hell is your face so red?
He asked with a quirked brow. Immediately, you stilled and looked absolutely anywhere other than at Bakugou's very attractive face. No reason. It just happens sometimes. You lied while trying to force the blood to drain out of your cheeks.
You're a shitty liar, which is probably a good thing,
he quipped. You looked almost offended, but he just scoffed while draping an arm across the back of the cool plastic booth. After a minute of silence, you started fidgeting as though you had something to say but were reluctant in letting it loose.
Just spit it out and stop squirming if you got something to say.
Your eyes finally met his as your fingers interlaced across the edge of the table. I guess I just wanted to say that I hope today wasn't a waste or anything. It wasn't much, but hopefully it was at least a little bit fun. Obviously, you want to get back home, but I hope today helped to let off some steam. Or just relax, maybe? Whatever Bakugou thought you were going to say, it wasn't asking him whether or not he had a good time today. He almost felt guilty to admit that, yeah, today was actually kind of fun, because shouldn't he be focused completely on finding a way back home? Of course, he'd never stopped thinking about new ideas or searching for clues, but the past 3 days had mentally exhausted him with pent-up irritation at the lack of tangible progress. He didn't know where to turn, but today cleared his head while providing a bit of entertainment as well. When he got back home, he knew Kirishima would jump at the chance to ride some roller coasters if Bakugou put up the idea. He also wasn't about to forget that you did all this shit on your own dime, taking time away from your own plans to keep him occupied. At the very least, he could offer up a bit of honesty in return.
I don't say this often, so listen up,
He enunciated while contrasting a stern tone with his casual demeanor. You leaned forward, hanging on his eventual answer.
Today wasn't half bad. The coasters didn't suck, and yeah, it did clear my head to make room for new ideas on how to get back home. So... He rolled his tongue around in his mouth, the words stuck in his throat like thick honey, before he rolled his eyes and continued. Thanks. Or whatever. So yeah, it was fun. Happy.
You looked as taken aback at his answer as he did towards your question before leaning back in your seat and grinning, the air around the table now much lighter than before. I'm glad. Maybe I used it as an excuse to chill out too.
You aren't as annoying as I thought you'd be,
Bakugou avowed. He really couldn't resist getting the last word in, and the exasperated look in your eyes made it worth it. I'll take that as a backhanded compliment, I guess. You then sat back as the man from the register appeared to set 2 trays of food in front of the both of you, steaming food and delicious smells pouring from the bowls and plates. Oh, wow, this looks good. Enjoy, the man offered with a smile before disappearing back behind the counter. Your mouth watered as you scanned the food before looking up to see Bakugou already breaking apart his chopsticks and... Oh fuck. Chopsticks. Your downfall. There weren't any other utensils on your tray, and you didn't want to ask for some and look like an idiot. Or maybe you'd look like a moron anyway since you never got the hang of how to use them correctly. Shit. Bakugou picked at his food easily, obviously well versed in casual chopstick use. You bit your lip and pulled apart the wooden sticks, holding one in each hand while imagining the food suddenly appearing on them to make your life easier, but no such luck. After a minute, Bakugou apparently noticed you hadn't touched your food, quirked an eyebrow at you while easily eating sticky rice.
Why? Oh shit. That's right. You don't know how to use chopsticks.
He mocked while taking another bite of food. Rather than starve and give him the satisfaction of making fun of you again, you tried to hold them with extreme concentration, only for one to keep falling onto the damn tray. Your angry mumbling must have amused Bakugou because his smug expression was permanently glued to his face.
Fucking come here,
he ordered before suddenly reaching over and grabbing your wrist across the table to arrange the chopsticks properly between your fingers. Frozen in place, you held your breath, eyes focused on Bakugou's deft fingers moving against your skin. They were calloused and warm, and somehow comforting in a way you couldn't really vocalize. This was the first time he'd touched you voluntarily, and you really hoped he couldn't feel the blood rushing and heart racing under your skin. All too soon, his hand retreated, gesturing for you to try again now that your fingers were supposedly in the right spot. Sure enough, it was much easier to hold the food than when you'd attempted it in the past, and you even managed to get most of it in your mouth. Bakugou just snickered as you ate, an occasional piece of rice falling into the napkin lining your thighs while you attempted to rid your mind of flustered thoughts. Bakugou finished his own food before you, despite ordering a larger portion, no thanks to your utensils. Eventually, though, you take one last bite before shoving the tray away, exhaustion coupled with a full stomach hitting you with full force. Fuck, I'm tired.
Then hurry up and drive before you drift into the wrong lane.
Bakugou snaps in front of your face after standing up, leading you out of the restaurant towards your car. It felt a bit eerie walking to your car in a dark and empty parking lot, but Bakugou's presence erased any bubbling fears as you unlocked the doors and opened up the driver's side. The drive back to your apartment felt longer than the drive to the park this morning. Bakugou attributed the false sense of time to exhaustion, building lights, car headlamps, and glowing streetlights passing over his vision, not unlike the illuminated roller coasters. You turned on the radio without asking if he minded, probably to help keep you awake, while you drove, occasionally glancing down at the digital map rotating and moving on your phone screen. Every once in a while, Bakugou snapped a sparking hand near your face when he noticed you looking sleepy, and every time you jumped like a rabbit and sit up to refocus on the road. At one point, your phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Catching Bakugou's attention, a text message alert popped up at the top of the screen, but true to your word as a good driver, you ignored it to keep your eyes centered on the road ahead. Curiosity tugged at the back of his head since you hadn't really mentioned friends or acquaintances of your own, but without the translator open, any questions he'd pose would be useless. He packaged away the information for later, though he couldn't pinpoint significance in a text of all things. When you finally pulled up in front of your apartment, he watched as your head fell forward onto the steering wheel from assumed fatigue. Tempting as it was to just shove you out of the car so he could shower and go the hell to sleep, it probably wasn't the most polite course of action following a day without arguing.
Oi, okite.
He barked in your ear, causing you to swat at him weakly as you sat up. He snorted and exited the car, turning around to yawn so you couldn't see. You grumbled and sluggishly made your way outside, up the stairs, and finally slid your apartment key into the lock with a satisfying click. Fucking finally. So tired. While you slipped off your shoes, Bakugou maneuvered past you to the bathroom and closed the door, not wasting any time apparently in washing off the grime of amusement park seats and railings. He really is a brat, you mumbled, before making your way into your room and closing the door, leaving it cracked just a bit for a stream of light to cut across your walls and bed. Bed. Good, delicious bed. You wasted no time in plopping down on the cool comforter, letting your eyes close for a moment before your phone buzzed. You'd seen the messages while on the road, but answering them while driving and sleepy spelled out a world of trouble. What you doing? Please. I'm bored, answer. Oh my gosh. It's late. I'm sleepy. Haven't talked to you in a while. Been busy? Sorta hard to explain. I can't. Where the hell would I even start, to be honest? Ooh, juicy. You couldn't tell her the truth about what was going on. No way. For one thing, she'd never believe you without seeing Bakugou for herself. But thinking up some excuse of a story sounded like far too much work right now, so instead you just closed your eyes and let the sound of the air conditioning ease you into a restful state. A loud knock at your door woke you up from almost dozing off after laying in bed longer than you assumed. Bakugou announced something through the door, but the sound was muffled and you couldn't understand his Japanese anyway. It took you a minute to register the voice of responsibility in your head nagging you to get up. Apparently, you'd taken just a moment too long and Bakugou knocked a little more insistently. An unexpected, "Okay?" coming through your door in your own language. He picked up things quickly. "Fine, getting up, hold on," you grumbled while almost falling off the bed and flinging the door open, leaving you face to face with Bakugou's very close chest. Immediately, you stepped back to see him already in his own pajamas, and a confused look on his face, the contours of his cheeks and nose barely visible in the darkness of your room. "I'm fine, just tired." You coughed before quickly grabbing up some pajamas of your own. "Let me just, You scooted past him through the door, careful not to brush against him on accident, and padded into the bathroom for your own shower, quickly closing the door behind you. Bakugou looked over his shoulder with peculiarity before walking into the kitchen and grabbing a glass of water.
4 days down. What the hell am I supposed to do now?
He huffed through his nose, eyeing his makeshift bed on your couch, reminding himself over and over again that his circumstances could be far worse.
I wonder what the hell the others are. Holy fucking shit, I'm so stupid!
He nearly dropped the glass in his hand at the mind-blowing realization that he wasn't actually alone in this. His dumbass friends back home, the hero agencies, even his parents had to realize he was missing by now. No, they definitely figured out something was wrong days ago when he didn't show up to Kaminari's drinking invitation, nor to his patrol shift the next day. And because he was a top hero, there would surely be some gigantic manhunt to find him. He'd disappeared right off a busy street, standing in front of that corner restaurant. Someone had to see what happened, right?
Fuck. Finally, some good news. Well, not news, but...
Bakugou grinned at the mental image of his friends and coworkers desperately searching for him. And not just him, for the wretched idiot of a villain too. Once they caught on, it was only a matter of time.
Time. What if I just have to wait it out?
He'd been so preoccupied with finding a solution on his own from this end, with understanding things with basically zero clues, that he hadn't thought of potential efforts back home.
I hate waiting, though. Feeling like I can't do a damn thing from here.
Bakugou paced back and forth for a minute before plopping down on the couch, his tired body easing into the cushions and blanket. His short surge of energy evaporated as quickly as it appeared, eyes and limbs heavy from the day's mental and physical activities. He listened to the water in the bathroom patter against the tiles before shutting off, telling him you were done showering.
Patience isn't my strength. Deku, don't disappoint with that overly analytical brain of yours. You either, ponytail.
He paused his muttering when the bathroom door opened, steam pouring out as you exited with your clothes. You looked refreshed, but still tired, about the same as he felt. You started to yawn, but covered your mouth when you caught him staring from across the room, before shuffling past him back into your bedroom. You really were odd, but not necessarily in a bad way. More like in a way that highlighted your inability to hide whatever you were thinking. Bakugou found that mildly comforting for some reason. He saw you lean over the couch with your phone as you stifled yet another yawn unsuccessfully after a minute. I'm, going to sleep. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm probably not the most exciting person to be around, but I'm glad it didn't turn out super boring. With hands folded behind his head, Bakugou furrowed his brows at your words.
Don't talk down about yourself. You're weird, but not boring. If I thought you were dull, I would have said so by now.
He stated candidly. Bakugou didn't really know why he went out of his way to talk you out of being self-deprecating, but it didn't feel wrong to do so. Maybe it reminded him a bit of how Kirishima used to be during high school, and even then he didn't let that shit slide. You stared down at him with rapt attention before blinking, suddenly, and cutting your eyes elsewhere, a free hand playing with the ends of your hair, twirling it between your fingers. Thanks. You obviously aren't a boring person to be around either.
No shit, I'm exciting as hell.
He gloated, easing the unexplained and brief tension in the air when you rolled your eyes. Yeah, well, it's been a very long day and I'm tired, so good night. If I don't see you in the morning, then I'll just say it's been... interesting. He raised a brow before you quickly added, in a good way, I mean... Otherwise, good night. Bakugou hummed as you retreated and closed your bedroom door, crimson eyes lingering for an extra moment before getting up to turn out all the lights. Sleep sounded fucking glorious right about now, even if he was resigned to a couch and some blankets. You plugged up your phone and climbed into bed, tapping away on the screen to your friend that you'd tell her about your recent adventure tomorrow. She sent you a bunch of kissy face emojis to butter you up, but there was no way you were going to tell her the hottest guy you'd ever laid eyes on was staying in your apartment until further notice. An immediate and urgent phone call would inevitably follow the text as soon as she read it, and you were far too tired to deal with that right now. Instead, you put your phone on silent and snuggled up into your blankets before you remembered something. Leaning over the side of the bed, you opened up your bag to take out the stuffed animal Bakugou won earlier. "I know you're not for me," you whispered into the darkness with a bit of unrealized longing. "But I couldn't just leave you for someone else. Maybe you'll be a good luck charm if I keep you around long enough." Silently, you slid the stuffed toy under your bed for safekeeping and returned to settle into the cool fabric of your pillow and sheets. You thought about everything that happened today. Bakugou defending you from that creep in line, getting him to smile and laugh on the rides, gushing over his destruction of that ball game, his hand on yours during dinner. Oh no. You hid your blushing face under the covers and curled up into a ball. I have a giant fucking crush on the real-life Bakugou Kotsuki. I'm peeking through your bedroom window. No. Bedroom door, girl. Your eyes followed each train as it screeched to a halt in the loading clock? No. He could easily be a model with how effortlessly. Bah! His pulse buzzed. Why did I say it that way? Buzzed. A man dressed up in some circus-type version of the normal park uniform, complete with off-center top hat, loudly banged a cane on the outside of his booth as the two of you passed before pointing the stick directly at Bakugou's passing silhouette. Whew. That was a long sentence. Shine! 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 Oh god. Oh, my voice. Bakugou, why you gotta scream? Alright, well, time to close up. Here you go. Good job there. Have a good night. Come back another time. Okay, let me do that again. A white car with far too many ugly bumpy stickers. No. You make a cute couple. Oh, did you hear my stomach?